Good morning, and thank you for joining 6 Live Streaming Myths Debunked, How to Optimize US Live Streaming E-Commerce with Vincent Yang, co-founder and CEO of Firework. As a reminder, if you have any questions during the conversation, to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Now here's your host, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of Coresight Research.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Mara. So we've heard so much recently about live streaming e-commerce, many new platforms, integrators, technology solutions, and we've asked Vincent to come and help us really understand the landscape. What is live streaming? What is the opportunity that it presents? Because I do think that while there's a ton of opportunity right now, I think there's also a lot of confusion as well in terms of what it actually is. In my opinion, it is the least expensive, most fun, engaging, huge opportunities for new brands to communicate with customers. And this whole idea that we can find new customers and new communities. And I'm completely passionate, as anybody knows, about this topic. So I'm really honored to be joined today by Vincent Yang, CEO of Firework. He's going to help us understand where retailers are in this journey, maybe what's holding people back. And then he's going to give us a snapshot, which I think is really exciting, of kind of what is this exactly? So first off, Vincent, thank you for joining me so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, for having me. So I'm glad to be here.
Same. So let's just start at the very beginning. What does the future of live streaming look like? And if you look back at last year, where do you think that, kind of retailers really kind of jumped into this live streaming ocean and, kind of not only did they maybe kind of take on some new opportunities, but also where do you think they had additional opportunities?
Yes, so it's a very broad question. So what we've seen is live stream started with a lot in China, where they're doing huge amounts of sales, combining live stream and e-commerce all together. So the US retailers, the US e-commerce brands starting to follow up, I think about 2 years ago, started by Amazon creating their shoppable live stream. So everyone is trying a lot in the US side. I would say in the last year, most of the people was experimenting inside of somewhere else app, right? Let's say they're doing live stream on TikTok, on Instagrams, on YouTube Live. They do a lot of experiment on that. But now starting from this year, so more and more companies starting to realize it's important to have the live stream on their social practice, etc. But they also starting to focus on their own platforms now. I think this is becoming more and more important, right? The big retailer trying to do, hey, how do I do a live stream on my own website? How do I do a live stream on my own app, right? Driving people to my destination beyond just, on the social side. I think this is becoming more and more important. And it's a very interesting trend. And what we've seen is about retailer and the brand are seeing much higher numbers and percentage of engagement rate, about conversion rate, and a lot of those happening. So
you're saying conversions are higher than they were a year ago or higher than they expected?
I think conversion is higher compared to when they do live stream just on social, if you compare the two, right? Because one of the misunderstanding people think is, in China, things can happen inside of a social native app. So in the US, of course, we can copy paste what's happening there. But what they realize is social has some buzz, but they're not able to see the conversions. So, but when they try the same experience on their own website, conversion really jumped very high.
Yeah, but I think that the challenge, right, and these are some of the topics we've talked about, but still kind of, I think it's fascinating in the US, right, where you run a live stream and 2/3 of the conversion happens after, right, the live stream, like the next 30 days. That to me is just a very interesting kind of phenomenon that we obviously, in China, right there, it's sold out in like 30 seconds. What do you think is the difference? Is it that the US consumer is still getting used to this? They want to do more research? Maybe dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So the phrase live is sometimes can be misleading. Some people think live stream got to be live, and when it's over, it disappears, right? But what we realize is about when many of the retailer bring the experience onto their own website, it doesn't need to disappear. It can be continued on, what we call replay live. right? And Deborah, as you said, 80% of the sales can happen on that, because when things are on a website, the consumer doesn't view that as just a live. They view that as a day-to-day human connection that originally happened only on offline. Now it happened on online, right? So there are many products, unless you're selling a product that's only exclusive for the live, many of the retailers are just showing the normal products during the live streams. So the duration for that and also the expiration date for that doesn't matter too much. You can continue to purchase products for the next 30 days or the 60 days of those. So, and also we all know there's a typical buying cycle. User doesn't just watch a video and buy right away. Not every one of them do. So actually leaving them sometimes, 7 days and 30 days, continue to come back to the videos is the way how it works a lot better.
But why do you think there's that difference, if you will, between what we've seen in China and what we've seen here in the West?
I think the biggest difference is about consumer behaviors, because in China's, 700 to 800 million smartphone users, they are all used to purchasing a product inside of a native mobile app. And many times the native mobile app is a super app, what we talk about, right? It's a super mega app. They do shopping, dating, chatting, everything in one single
Hire
app.
rail tickets.
Yeah, do everything, right? Whereas in the Western market, because in the last 30 years, there's a proliferation of services. And so in the US, we're very used to about one app or one business do one thing. So I use Snapchat to mostly talk to my high school classmates. I use Instagram to mostly follow what Ariana Grande has for breakfast. I use TikTok mostly to have a laugh, right? And then, but when I do shopping, I go to Safeway to do grocery shopping. I go to Target to do buy all the other close brand shoppings. I go to Ralph Lauren to buy specific product. You see, in the US, people's mindset is one app does one thing, right? So that's very, very different. 97% of e-commerce and transaction do not happen inside of a social media. It happens on a separate website. That's why, friend, you and I both formerly work in investment banking. That's why let's look at Shopify. Many investors say, how come Shopify, before the stock market correction, is $250 billion market cap? But you know what? There's no Shopify in China. It's the same thing. There's the Alibaba Taobao live stream in China. Nothing happened in the US. There's the Shopify in the US, but there's no Shopify in China. So that exactly tells how different the two markets are.
No, I think it's an excellent point. And I do think, let's look at some examples of what, which I think this is going to be phenomenal, Vincent. Thank you for sharing this with us, because I do think there is this kind of lack of understanding of what live streaming really is, how easy it is, right? Especially with Firework. And so we want to have you share some of those examples with us today, and maybe just kind of talk us through what we're seeing.
Absolutely. So now let's take a look. So I want to use one example. It's called Muji. So let's take a look at it. So Deborah, could you see the screen okay?
Perfect.
So Muji is a global retailer with about $5 billion in revenues. It's headquartered in Japan. So they come to us about last year to say, they're due to the pandemic that the foot traffic going to the physical store is not increasing that much, right? So they really want to do online shoppings, but instead of sell through images, they want to bring the human connection that only you can get offline now to online, right? So that's kind of the experience how they do now across many of the stores. Every single week, they're doing a live stream. Now let's click open to look at how the experience look like, right? You tap the watch. I'm going to mute the sound for it, right? Now you can see, right, how they're doing the live stream. But the very interesting thing, Deborah, as you said, is about look at how easy it was, because when you look at these two people, they're not influencer. They're not celebrity. They don't have actor or actress training. They're just two normal employees that working at the stores from Muji, right? And then very counterintuitive. Normally say, well, I'm going to create a video, gotta hire professional camera crews, etc. No, everything they use is Firework, right? From streaming to hosting, from content editing and everything like that. And they just literally use a smartphone. How easy was that? And then what's the result? Surprisingly, their call to actions for the add to shopping cart, right, is about 50%. 50%, where in the average for e-commerce about 1.8%. That's 20 times higher. Also the engagement time, people might think, well, they're not celebrities and other, how long do people watch the video? believe it or not, average consumer watched the video for 17 minutes. 17 minutes, right? Why? Because if you look at that experience, this is the most closest to how I shop offline. They're bringing that experience online and also chatting. Right, 80% of people actually chat here. They ask questions, right? So that's kind of the experience how they're doing it, for the Muji's examples.
Now it makes a lot of sense. And I think also, right, what we're seeing here is a very, and I agree with you on this, like professionalization of the sales associate. So not only are we creating an entirely new path for them in terms of a profession, but the fact that it is like, I like how you put that, right? We're basically taking kind of our typical shopping experience and bringing it kind of closer. So we understand, right, kind of, oh, this is exactly how I'd experience this if I were there. And, oh, the sales associate is helping me discover new products. And that I think is actually incredibly interesting.
Yes. And another thing, Deborah, one day what I learned is someone told me before, say, hey, look, in the future, every single retail store is going to be a studio. I really got inspired a lot by that, right? Traditional retailer store, they have the physical environment, right? But now, what many brands are doing, they're transforming, right, their physical environment for shopping into the stores. And then what they're doing in the store is now, the transfer directly to the online platform, right? Definitely onto the social, but many people are starting to stream it directly into the website, because millions, sometimes tens of millions people actually go to the website to shop.
Yeah, it is an excellent point in terms of some of the difference. And I think that, one of the things that we've seen is where, sales associates, right, there's an authenticity there and there's a passion for the product and they know the product, right?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we as consumers are going to a live stream to learn more about what we should buy. And right, the stats we have, from the retailers we've worked with is, right, return rates are, declined about 50% when an item is bought through a live. So to me, this is like almost like the definition of sustainability, because we're spending a lot less than we are through any other kind of channel of communication to educate, influence, inspire a consumer. We're taking down, right, kind of what is, a huge issue for, really the entire ecosystem, which is what to do with all of these returns. And lastly, it is fun, right, and engaging. And so I really think that, this is, it's not kind of like a, it's more not an if, it's when, right? When are retailers going to kind of embrace this? And maybe one of the other kind of topics we can kind of dive into is, why has it taken some of them just, what is there, like a fear? What is it that, why is not every retailer doing this right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Deborah, that's a very good question. So I think a lot is perception, and people have an existing perceptions that video is expensive. Video is very difficult to do, right? In particular to the US, it's the same thing that in China, people adopt mobile payment very fast. But in the US, mobile payment, we're not seeing that adoption. Why? Because the credit card industry is so big, right? But China doesn't have that legacy. They just go directly leapfrog to cash to mobile payment. Now for US, in the past, we have something called TV shopping, right? TV seats, which, as you see, we're having almost like celebrity personalities, right? To in the stage, right? No different than, a Hollywood studios creating the TV shopping. Many people say live streams is just a QVC 2.0, 3.0. However, it's not exactly like that, right? Because when people are thinking about that, they just set a high bar for themselves. Oh, content going to be amazing. I'm going to spend $1 million, hire celebrity, etc. I think it's just kind of this internal fear of stepping out of the comfort zones that make it so hard for the US. They all wanted to do it, but many brands we talked to, they're like, well, let me talk once we have a celebrity, etc. So they need to, they need to, take that step forward, right? And look at the data.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. We've worked very closely with many retailers to either, do research or help produce. And I do feel that there is this, it's got to be bigger and better. And I'm like, my whole thing is like, if you're looking at 30 minutes or an hour, which is what we recommend, and no mistakes have happened, right? If nobody has like burped or sneezed or dropped something, you have to do it before the end, because that's real life. And right, we're experiencing this in like the real, right? This is not kind of staged. And so I really do kind of think it is fascinating. And it also makes, I mean, I've been on some of these live streams where, right, out of the blue, and I think it's the best, right? Especially where it's like a founder, right? When you start to see some of these smaller indie brands and they just go off and talk about, right, like their day, something that went well. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, you know, I in the background for helping people, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening, right? But it always works. And that's the thing. I think there is this, like, I do feel there's this fear factor that's not going to be perfect, but that's kind of the whole point, right?
Yes. So you mentioned a word before. It's called authenticity. It's actually very important, right? In particular because we talk a lot about the future of retails, but before that, we first need to understand the future of millennial Gen Z, because these are the consumers, right? Three things in our mind that care so much. Three words is authenticity, it was transparency, and it was community, right? Anything that they view as stage, they're like, oh, this is fake. This is, you're paying this person to do that. It's fake. They really care about authentic. They really care about their voice being part of the brand versus just being, the receiver end of the brand. So that's why the community matters so much to them, right? It doesn't matter whether, sometimes when things are not perfect, they actually like it a lot more. Right. And of course, transparency. When the founders, when the brand ambassador, their own employee talking passionately about this is where the product comes from. Let me show you the ingredients. Let me show you that. Let me show you how my day look like. Right. It's full transparency. People love that. So I think those are the key things to really engage millennial and Gen Zs. That's why this interactive live stream format can really work well for them.
It's funny. You talked about this idea around, the brand ambassador, and we have seen unbelievable success there, which I honestly is one of the things that, because once again, we don't really have that the same way in China. I was like, but what's been fascinating, right, is because this person is in the stores all the time and they know the product in a different way. And what's really interesting, they're almost like the celebrity for the brand. And what I found, it's been so interesting, right, because that person, that personality can go into the stores and work with sales associates, and it is a celebrity for that specific brand, as opposed to having kind of a KOL or an influencer. And I've found those to work really, really well, and that's been one interesting takeaway. And then secondly, one of the, I'm actually gonna say it's a mistake, and I don't use that word lightly, is that we find retailers, they'll have a great experience on a live stream and they're like, oh, we'll do that in 3 more months. I'm like, what? I'm like, I mean, it's like one of those things. And I'm like, you have to do it every week at the same time, even better every day, but like, let's not push that. Why do you think that's like one of my kind of like, why do you think do they look at it like a TV show? What is that?
I think it's habit. It's habit forming. I think it's spot on. That's the thing that I talk to CMOs all the time as well. You cannot do live stream for once and then call it a day and evaluate the success. Oh, I'm going to do a live stream in this, on one day, I'm going to see how much money I make. If I don't make a lot of money, the entire live stream thing doesn't work. I'm like, This is equivalent to you upload it to YouTube and hoping that you can have 10 million followers overnight. It doesn't happen because there's a habit, right? So now the right way, how retailer, how the D2C brand should do it, is do it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, right? To create a habit to say, hey, you know what? Every Saturday night at 8 p.m., all the consumer come onto the website, right? They will do shout out onto social, on the email subscribers. And every week, they will be dropping new items. If that's a fashion and clothing brand, right? Because their product release cycle is very fast, right? They can drop new items. They can test new products on a weekly basis. So then the consumer has a habit. They'll come here all the times, right? It's the same thing that we're watching those tradition on the television every Friday night, sit on TV to watch this. Now you can have those experience. It's creating the habit that getting people to come to the website, consume this amazing content.
It's a really interesting idea. And then the other, I think, important thing that you just discussed was around community. And I do think one of the biggest surprises that we've seen is, right, especially if we're in the back end of the live stream, is, right, consumers are talking to each other. And I'm like, the first time I saw it, I was like, what's going on, right? And certainly like, because in China, right, it's all about your relationship with the KOL. Did the KOL say my name? Did they recognize me, right? And there's this, it's just a very different relationship. So I first started to see that. And then you see they're all exchanging each other's Instagram handles so they can connect afterwards. And I found that to be, first of all, especially during the pandemic, I think we really needed that. And I do think that, sometimes going back to this, kind of decline in, returns or decrease in returns, which is probably a more positive way to put it. I do think that they're asking their kind of friends, right? What do you think about this color, right? Do you like this kind of silhouette? And that, I think, so it's not only are they taking direction from, the person, whether it's a brand ambassador, sales associate, or celebrity who's kind of the creator who's conducting the live stream, they're then getting that additional touch point. And what we've also found, right, is that sometimes they're going back to that person even after the live event to say, oh, did you buy anything, right? Like, what was your experience? Oh, maybe we should both get these things. And so I feel that community, and I do feel, right, what's also interesting, and not to, Firework's doing so many amazing things, probably this is on your kind of, roadmap somewhere, but that this idea of how do you create either a community inside of the platform or help the retailers create that community? Because I think that to me is so powerful.
Yeah, I think community is something that you mentioned, and also is something that millennial and Gen Z really seek. And so we spend a lot of time on the roadmap. So for example, Alberts and Safeway is one of our big customer on the retailer side. They have thousands of stores, but it's all local communities, right? And, I shop very often in a few Bay Area stores. It was so close that I almost know the butcher that actually do the sandwiches for me every time, right? Now imagine when you are bringing a butcher in front of the cameras to say, hey, here's how I make the sandwich recipe. You bring, right? And a lot of people like in the community, and also a lot of people shop at the same times. So they know each other. They say hi to each other. That also, the retailer benefit a lot because people are going to come back to your website much more often. It's more fun. It's, again, coming back to this 2 word. It's called human connections, right? Everything, people are like, why does live stream work compared to just the way how we do it? Just put an image. Right? The fundamental thing, I always thought the real underlying thing, the key essence is human connections. It's the emotional human connection that you're never able to get from a website. Now you have it, right? That's the sole reason why it drives. And that human connection is global, never because it was China or the US. Yes, the platform is different. One is in a centralized walled garden. One is in the US, is more decentralized. But the human connection that drives people to buy more, shop more, stay longer, it's universal.
You talked about this idea I thought was really interesting, especially as a firm that does research, is that, right, the consumer is basically researching, right? That is they're going to the store, right? How do I make this sandwich, right? What are the best ingredients for me and for my family? And then, kind of thinking about live streaming, right? That's another avenue to do research. So, the data that we have shows that, in China, it takes 12 different touch points to convert, right? If you think almost kind of 12 little pieces of research before they make the decision. In the US, it's only 4, but I think it also goes back to, you're talking, right, in a decentralized, it's a lot more challenging to pull those pieces together. And what I've seen, there's been sometimes I've been in stores and you are seeing kind of just, like with the Muji example, a live stream take place. And so, you go and you watch and you're like, oh, I did have that question, or thank you for answering that. And, it's, and you're seeing it kind of like live and in the flesh. And so I really believe, especially in grocery, which is why I think your relationship with Albertsons and Safeway is so interesting, is that if we know that, remember they used to have people like in stores who were like cooking and, right? All these things that, you would go, okay, on Saturdays at 11, right? There's going to be this kind of whole demo. This is almost that idea, but taken to a different level.
Yes, exactly. So I also think if you look at the consumer behavior starting to change, for example, if you look at traditional grocer, people visit a website at 5 p.m. Why? Because they're about to buy the food for their dinner. But now when you're starting to do live stream and short video, well, we're starting to see people starting to visit a website at 2 o'clock p.m. and sometimes visit a website at 10 o'clock. You're like, wait, why? Those are not the time people do transactional purchases. But those are the time people are bored, they watch content, right? So that's very interesting. I still remember the thing what their chief digital officer of Safeway told me to say, they want to be a place for inspiration. They don't just want to be a place where people come in and transact. They want to be a place, right? They can use all the food video to inspire people. Whether they purchase or not doesn't really matter, right? Can we become, all the retailer, I think you should become the destination for your own product. Safeway is now the destination, a short video for food and live stream for food, right? Fashion brand, you can be, right? All the destinations. So I think that's really the new technology can empower people to do that now, today.
I don't want to put this on your shoulders, but I'm going to, which is, right, if we think about the, just the stats around health and whatnot, right? The opportunity, I think, for you as you're working with Albertsons Safeway, right, is to also create content, because ultimately a lot of times, right, you just don't know, right? And you're reaching for something at the last minute. But if you can actually plan and you understand, okay, hey, maybe tonight I've had a long day, I want to kind of like have something less healthy. Or, right, kind of what is the healthier, less healthy version of that? I mean, really, Vincent, you have an opportunity to almost change a generation.
Well, I thank you. I think that's bigger than what we thought about. But I think the things what many retailers do, again, it's not just about selling the product, right?
No.
It's about telling the story. For Safeway's kid, they wanted people to eat better, right? They're showcasing all the food recipes and a lot of them. So, Deborah, is it okay to share my screen to show everybody
Yes.
how it looked like? So
I think it's great because, it is, nobody would have thought, and I think this is what's really important, that you would see live streaming grocery. And that's why I really think that you've kind of broken some boundaries here.
Yeah, so that's kind of the experience how they're doing. They do live stream, and also many times after the live stream, they will cut it into the short videos, right? Now they're talking about how do you make a cookings using a beef, right? Actually, it's 3 videos showing in front of that. This is actually very interesting. I might not try to buy things, but that's later on we can talk about the discover element, which the US retailer never has, right? It's more search and transactional, but now you see, you can have it, right? This is the way how you can show how a lamb burger has been made. Look at that, right? This is so much better than just the traditional image base, right? There's so many ways how people can do that and directly onto the website, right? It's very mobile friendly, right? Now, the same thing that the East Coast is called the fresh market. I know a lot of people shop over there. They're trying to do the same thing. Now, when you look at a website, again, this is they're now all shifting to video. Right? And look at that experience for the Pi days, right? So now this is how they're just showing that. So anyway, so this gives people, this is really, I call the new storefront for retailers, right? And anyway, so that there's many things they can be reimagined, how to engage with the customer. Many of them are also thinking about showing the ingredients. Let's say if you're selling wines, right? Right now you're doing is showing an image, but wouldn't it be better you can have the wineries that to show what's happening in the wineries, right? What would they call the farm to table? If you're selling watermelon, why don't you show it what a watermelon you're selling coffee? All right, now have your Argentiners, the coffee brewer, to literally show it. Like, right? That's what we talk about, the sustainability, environmental friendliness, and also the transparency. Show me the ingredient, show whether it grows up right away. Right? There are many creativity possibility now you can do for retail.
Yeah, I think, you just scratched the surface of something that I've really been very inspired by what we've seen in China, is where you're going to like these 5th-tier cities and you are turning these farmers, first of all, you're creating almost a brand name, right? I want Susie's chickens, or I want Sally's, tangerines. And so I think you're changing, right, this whole idea that it's just food and it comes from a farm. And I do feel that we're in a very interesting, this would be like a whole nother webinar, but that when it comes to food, right, how the consumer thinks about where their food is coming from, and to almost give a name, right, to something that previously has just been oranges, or that to me is a really kind of like deep and interesting topic. And there's this whole thing around kind of, right, like the aging out of farmers, and just kind of, I think that you really hit on something important here, but I do want to, we actually have quite a few questions, Vincent. So I'm going to kind of run
let's
these
go
by
through a
you.
lot of
So
those.
so if anyone else has questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom and we'll get started. All right. How much will live commerce grow and become dominant in the e-commerce shopping market size? Thank you, from Michael.
Yes, so in China, Deborah, I'm sure you have the data, same as what I do. So now the live stream e-commerce in China last year is $435 billion. This year should hit about $700 billion, which is already about 25% of the total e-commerce TAM, target addressable market in China. That's already 25%. Well, for the many research, what I read about, they can hit about 40 to 50%, which is deliver half of the entire e-commerce for the China market. China e-commerce is in the trillions, and they can do half of that. Now, US, the live stream e-commerce is less than even a single-digit percentage. That's why on one side, the growth can be enormous. Many people think we can grow to a 30 billion to potentially even 100 billion market. But again, it's really still the beginning. The opportunity can be massive, just in terms of the penetration to the total e-commerce market. And also, it's not just about replacing the traditional e-commerce transaction, but also taking over a lot of the offline physical shopping experience now to online. And for the US, the physical GMV for shopping offline is even much, much higher than the online. So that's why the opportunity, what we can do here is actually quite big for every retailer and stores.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start to look at the numbers and in the US, I mean, we believe the market will double this year. I mean, you're off of a lower base, but when you start to look at those growth trajectories, right, that's very significant. So huge opportunity. All right. Question number 2 from Mark. Any lessons that can come from the old in-home pampered chef local neighborhood sales event connection that can incorporate live show and streaming? It's a great question.
Yeah, so I think local events, the local shopping event is actually very, very good. So we recently helped a few brands to do their local shopping event. One of them actually did about $30,000 sales just in one single live stream directly on its website. So it's actually very good. Again, this is once you can get over the hurdle that you can use your store manager, store associate, the same thing how you bring the shop to the farmer's market, etc. You can do it online. And then you actually will get much, much better result than actually doing the kind of staged, studio produced kind of content. So
that's great. All right. How should we think about estimating the cost of hosting, streaming, and coding live shopping sessions from Charlotte?
Yeah. So I never sell our solutions. I try to focus more on the industry, but in general, what you're seeing is now there are new technology companies similar to Firework to commoditize or democratizing the live streaming infrastructures to make it very easy and to make it relatively affordable to all the brands to do that. So, right, there is the infra. The infra is about serving and streaming the short video and the live streams, but it's not too expensive. So for startup can do that. Of course, you have Alberts and Civic can do that, but the affordability is actually very low. Every brand should be able to do that.
I think that's an important point, is that if you also look at the cost between a live stream and some of the other ways, right, to kind of educate consumers or to market to them, it really is unbelievable, especially if you're using or utilizing your sales associates. Yeah. I mean, we've talked to some retailers, it's really interesting, and they are giving their associates like gift cards and other incentives, right? If they even if they just host a live stream, depending on their sales volume. But I do think that there's a lot to be said. I thought the Muji example was an excellent one in terms of just seeing kind of what something looks like, right, in a store environment. So I think that is really interesting. All right. Another question. What are the key technologies and maybe even like the infrastructure in the live streaming e-commerce space? And that question is from Stephen.
Yeah. So when we go to the technical piece, I think there are a few key elements of the tech. One is what we call the ultra low latency streaming. Because the streaming happened on a website, unlike China, everything happened on a native mobile app. Website doesn't have that power to do a lot of those, right? You don't want to watch a live stream, it laggings and it delays and everything. You want to have a smooth experience. So that's one of the technologies that we built in-house called ultra low latency streaming. We spend a lot of time. We have around 150 engineers that are working on that to work with all the CDNs globally to do multi-CDN, to do offloading, etc. But that's one. Other than new technology coming up, which is because of all those technology that make now live streaming possible on a website, right? Another one is called rendering, right? So in Firework, we innovated technology that can convert a very big video file. Every time when you think about streaming video on the website, you're, oh my God, it's going to drag down my website loading speed. Yes, it does 10 years ago. Now it does not. It doesn't drag down the website speed at all, right? Because the new AI-powered rendering technology is able to compress a video file to so small, it's actually smaller than an image. Right? Without,
it's funny that you bring that up because we've spent a lot of time in 3D design, and right, you're ultimately putting these files onto websites, right? So, but there's a whole thing, especially in apparel, right, to look at like the draping and whatnot. And so we've actually had to use rendering farms, right? I mean, it is, when you think about it, but it absolutely can drag down a website, but having that kind of, that look as opposed to like a static image, it is absolutely critical. And I think that, what you're doing in that space, it's really quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And the final thing is AI's recommendations and machine learnings. To give an example, Safeway's case and Muji's case, they have so many different stores in different locations. Each store, they only sell different product, even different price, right? So now, we build a deep learning layer so to empower different stores, the different audience can see different live streams. And also based on the behavior, you can show the different content to them. This is the same thing that you're seeing on YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat, right? 100 million people are seeing 100 million unique personalized feed. Now, what we are bringing that is to the retailer, right? All the store, all the user, they will be seeing very different things. All the feed, all the content is personalized to them. This never happened on the website, right? Now it's available now.
That is actually really, I mean, it's just such a change in terms of what we've seen a few years ago, and right, the opportunity to just kind of, it's almost like you're bringing your website to life. And I think that there has been this, because it's very 2D, and right, what live streaming does is it really makes this experience, right, a 3D experience, which is more similar to what we're used to. So, all right, last question, which is multi parts. Why is the East lagging the West in terms of live streaming adoption? When will they catch up? Let's do that. And there's like a few more parts of that question.
Yes. I think the US will catch up in 2 to 3 years. And we are already seeing, by being on the field, we are already seeing pretty much all the big retailers are experimenting, piloting, or already work with Firework to launch in full scales. The enthusiasm is high. 2 years ago in the US, you talked to them live stream, this doesn't exist. Now, many CMOs, CDOs, chief digital officers are putting live stream to the entire 2022 key strategy. Many people say the entire year, the biggest one is live stream, right? So it's just that, China was, 3 years ahead of that, but I think US is going to catch up in 2 to 3 years, and then it will catch up, but they will catch up in a way that's very different from how China was doing it, right? The form is the same, but the place what lives on is the very, very different ways.
That's a good point. I think it may answer some of the second part of this question. In the future, do you believe that consumer adoption will look similar to that in the East, or are there intrinsic differences between markets?
The only intrinsic difference is what I've been saying in the beginning is because in the Western market, shopping happened on website, happened on D2C website. There are 3.6 million direct-to-consumer website in the Western market. And in China, 0. Right? So that's the biggest difference, right? Because China, everything people buy in JD.coms, in JDs, in Taobao's and everything, right? But US is separate website. I would say that's the intrinsic difference to the places where people shops. But the new shopping experience between China and US will be the same because, as I said, the human connections is universal wherever you are.
So if, for those retailers who are on the call with us today, Vincent, and have not kind of gotten started on their live streaming path, what should they do first? Right? Where do we just get started? Because I think if we can start to break it down, it makes it easier for folks.
Yes. So if we use the word like crawl, walk, and run, I think the crawl is start to experiment some live stream. Social media is the good place to do it because it's very easy. It's all for free. Create an account, at least to experiment in terms of content, right? in front of the camera, have your store associate to do something, right? Don't worry too much about whether there is conversion or viewership, etc. That doesn't matter. It's essentially is let's do the warm-up exercise on the social media. So once that's up running, right, and then you need to pick a technology, right, and either Firework or some other players in the market, right, because now there's differentiation, who does what, pick a technology, put it onto the website. Integration to website now has been very, very easy now, right? It's what I call the no-code integration. And then test on a website. And this time start measure the conversion rate difference before and after, measure the engagement time difference before and after, right? That's the second phase, is the walk phase. And once you test it out, all the numbers shows that conversion is 5 times than before, and then you run. What do I mean by run is adopting this is what I call the organization adoption. Setting up your content team, converting your store associate, because they have nothing to do anyway during the daytime, isn't it? Right? And convert them to do the live stream, etc. Or create short videos and put it onto the website. Changing your storefront to be more video first, to be more mobile first, right? So these are the 3 stages what I recommend.
And as you think about the talent, this is one of the other questions we get. If you think about the talent that they have, how do they do they need to do anything to train that talent? Or is it that, they're just trying to do what they are already doing, right, directly with customers, but in a video kind of setting?
Yeah, so I don't think they need to do too much training, except just tell them to look at the cameras. And by the way, the camera is a smartphone, so it's very easy, right? The same thing, Deborah, you and I, we never did any actor trainings. I think we're doing a webinar fine. We're doing a video, right? We're doing a live stream here, right? And I think the audience you're engaging is you're asking questions, right? You don't just turn away because none of us has Hollywood trainings. We are the most passionate at talking about what things should be, right? So that's kind of the key things. I don't think they need to do any special training, etc. But however, when we talk about brand ambassador, I do want to bring one caveat. So many people think the brand ambassador is the store. So yes, store associate is a very important element. However, you can also use your actual influencers or brand ambassadors, right? The creators part of it, right? We have the feature that allow you to send a link to all of your creators for them to do the live stream or leverage the social to drive traffic. That also works, right? It's 2 components. What I find sometimes using creators and influencers might be the easier way to adopt. And then you have train and also, convert your store associate to do the same things.
I mean, it's so funny. I think back to, I know we've just got a few more minutes, but I think back to what I saw in the very early days, right, in China, since I was there when this all started, right? And you would visit, there were like entire schools, right, that would, right, which I think it was like, I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, it was so wild, because what I also loved to see was how everyone could take the same training, but that their personalities really kind of came through, and I felt like I got to know them in a way that, they like touched upon like your heart, and were really able to, it's probably part of the training, they were really able to help you think about how this brand kind of spoke to you, like the specific products. And that's also why I feel here, right, in the US, right, sales associates are doing that every single day. And if we're seeing this opportunity to engage with consumers in new ways, or at times that work for them, or if they're kind of back to back, if they can they know that you're going live at a certain time, or if they go back and kind of have this opportunity to view this video that's kind of saved on previously live on your website, it seems like we're helping the consumer to kind of make this work for them. And I actually think that that's if I were to culminate everything that we've talked about, right, it's putting, right, it's almost this flexibility, right, that we are, and this is the way, right, that consumers want to be able to live now, right, is we've all learned, right, working from home and whatnot, this flexibility, but they also want flexibility in how they shop. And so that's where I feel this topic, I think that, this year we'll see greater education. If you can imagine, right, we're already through almost the first quarter. I think I felt that 22 would be more of a tipping point. I still feel we're seeing more of an education. I know, Vincent, you and I speak with many retailers and brands about this exact conversation, which is why I think we're quite good at it, right? Is what is it, why, how, but I feel like they're setting the foundation. And that will give them, and they're going to experiment this year with maybe more of that like tipping point. And it could be, if you will, up and to the right, however you want to look at it, but really significant sales growth in 23, with this year is more of kind of I thought it would be last year. There was a lot going on for retail last year. I don't know how you look at that. And if you just want to kind of, sum up so many of the topics that we talked about, because I know
I think just you already summarized it very well. Maybe just to add it to summarize it for the brand's perspective, you are essentially humanizing your brand, right? Because from the online environment, the traditional website is cold, right? Human being connect with human being. We're never connected with just show me a text and show me an image, show me a website, right? So the time when you bring the humans in front of the cameras and face me, when I visit a website, I almost feel like this store associate or this brand ambassador is talking to me, right? So literally that you're humanizing the brand. And again, there are many benefits. It's what I was saying. People stay longer, people buy more, people shop more, average order value increase, etc. So that's, I think, Deborah, if I put one sentence, I think is humanize your brand, turning your store into a studio. That's the way how the future shopping should be.
I couldn't agree with you more. So I'm going to conclude. We're going to conclude there because there is so much. We'll have to do kind of parts 2 and 3 of this, because there really is kind of a lot to unpack here. And Vincent, I think showing the examples was incredibly helpful. So thank you. If you are interested in hearing more about this topic that is near and dear to our hearts, I will be speaking at Shop Talk on Monday, the 28th. And the kind of title of the session is Seizing the Live Streaming and Shoppable Video Opportunity. That will be at 2:20 p.m. on the Monday. And so Vincent and I have talked about some great data that we'll be sharing and whatnot. So it really will be a significant opportunity to kind of learn more about this topic that is really, I think, very critical right now to the success at retail. And, as sustainability is really the number one question that investors and shareholders are asking, live streaming is a great way to get there. So Vincent, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Just
you,
a
Deborah.
phenomenal conversation. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to talking to you and seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.